Stop searching. Your quest for the meaning of life is a sham. Yes, you heard that right. You were programmed to believe there is one great purpose waiting for you, a mission that, if not discovered, condemns you to emptiness. But that is the cruelest lie ever told you. James Hillman, the genius who challenged everything, knew that this obsession with a single meaning is the root of your frustration. It is a cultural trap, a cult of performance that suffocates you. In this video, I will shatter that illusion and explain why life has no fixed meaning and why that is the key to your true freedom. No more gurus and no more anxiety. Together, we will dive into this revolutionary idea that no one ever told you and reveal how to stop running in circles. Enough suffering. Stay until the end to discover the secret that will allow you to live fully without the tyranny of a single purpose. At some point, almost everyone has asked themselves, what is the meaning of my life? It seems like a noble question, does it not? But hidden behind it is often a subtle trap woven by modern culture itself. From early on, we are bombarded with the idea that there is one great purpose, one supreme mission we must find, as if there were only one paved road waiting for us, and failing to find it is almost an existential sin. The problem is that this pressure creates paralyzing anguish. The mind spins in circles, anxious and fearful of making the wrong choice and ending up living an empty life. It is no coincidence that we see an explosion of courses, books, and teachers promising to reveal your true purpose. It is the neurotic industry disguised as self-knowledge. And the more we search, the farther we move from ourselves. James Hillman saw this with clinical clarity. He understood that this obsession with a single meaning is nothing more than a cultural fantasy. The myth of the single purpose is a recent invention, fueled by Western individualism and the cult of achievement. After all, if each of us had to find one definitive meaning, how many of us would already be condemned? Hillman asked, why reduce such a vast soul to a single script? And here we begin to see the weight of that trap. It does not lead us to fulfillment, but to constant frustration. It is like trying to fit a river into a single glass of water. It simply cannot fit. And when it does not fit, suffering arises. Notice how this search for one great purpose generates chronic anxiety. People begin to doubt every everyday choice, afraid of wasting time or straying from the path. It is the young adult who freezes over choosing the wrong course. It is the worker who suffers in silence at their job while waiting to discover their true mission. It is the retiree carrying guilt for never fulfilling the soul's calling. A lifetime becomes frozen in an eternal wait for the grand sign that never arrives. And when they finally realize that sign is never coming, the frustration explodes. The cruelest part is that this neurosis is not born of ill will. It is sold as an act of courage, an invitation to go deeper. How many times have you heard, you need to find your life purpose? Rarely does anyone warn that this obsessive search may be exactly what is preventing life from flowing. While the mind chases one single meaning, the soul, that mysterious plural entity, sickens in the prison of unreachable expectations. Not because there is no meaning, but because there are too many waiting to be lived. Hillman calls us to break this spell. He invites us to see the soul not as a straight line, but as a fertile garden filled with paths, flowers, and unexpected trails. Life does not need a single destination to be full. On the contrary, it is in the tangle of small experiences, daily choices, fleeting passions, and even momentary confusions that the true flavor of existence emerges. This vision changes everything. Instead of seeking meaning, we begin to live the many meanings. And here, in this opening of multiple possibilities, we begin to glimpse something far more liberating, something you may never have heard with such clarity before. And that leads us directly to Hillman's surprising vision of the soul as a field of multiple images and meanings. When Hillman speaks of the soul, he is not imagining a single linear entity, but rather a vast inner universe filled with characters, voices, and images. It is as if within each of us lives a small Olympus, where our inner gods vie for attention. Instead of one fixed self, we have a true psychic community. And what is most curious is that these different forces do not always agree, and yet everything is okay. It is this internal diversity that makes life rich, complex, and deeply human. The problem begins when we try to silence this multiplicity in the name of a single fixed identity. The soul begins to suffocate because it was never meant to fit into just one mold. Imagine someone taught from childhood to be purely rational and practical. Every time an artistic desire arises, a mystical curiosity or a longing to explore new passions, that person suppresses those inner voices for fear of straying off course. Gradually, the images forming their soul retreat, but they do not disappear. They simply become shadows that later emerge as anxiety, anguish, or that inexplicable feeling of emptiness. Because the soul cannot endure being amputated, it cries out for space, for diversity, and for all the versions of ourselves to coexist. Hillman calls this psychic polytheism. It is a daring concept because it breaks with the idea of personality unification so widely sold around us. While many advise you to find who you really are, Hillman proposes something far deeper. Accept that you are many, and by doing so the soul expands. You do not need to kill the dreamer to be a good professional, nor stifle logic to be an artist. Everyone can coexist, dialogue, and contribute. It is the dynamic balance between these voices that gives life its depth. Notice how this explains so many of our inner conflicts. How many times have you felt one part of you wanting to choose one path while another part cried out in the opposite direction? It is not weakness or indecision. It is the soul speaking its symbolic language, asking to be heard in whole. It is like having an internal orchestra where every instrument matters. When we try to silence some of them, the music loses its richness. True harmony is not about eliminating conflicts, but listening to them with curiosity and respect. And this is exactly where many get lost, trying to resolve internally what should actually be welcomed. Psychic polytheism does not ask you to choose only one path, but to learn to dance with your many faces. One day you are the courageous warrior, the next the sensitive poet, later the wise observer, and everything is fine. This is the living fabric of the soul. It is what gives life color, texture, and depth. Now you may be asking yourself, then there is no destiny? No end point? That question leads us directly to the next point, where we will expose the myth of the telos and the error of believing there is a single end waiting for you. For centuries, the idea of the telos, that great final destination, was sold as the pinnacle of human existence, as if each of us had a straight line already mapped out leading to a single point of fulfillment. Worse yet, as if only by reaching that point could we finally breathe in peace. It is an alluring but dangerous narrative, because life is not a marathon with a finish line. It is far more like an improvised dance full of detours, unexpected encounters, and shifting rhythms. Those obsessed with the telos are always dissatisfied, like someone forcing puzzle pieces that never quite fit. James Hillman dismantles this illusion with an almost uncomfortable wisdom. He says there is no out there waiting for you. That supposed destination is a mental construct meant to give the ego security. The soul, in contrast, does not worry about grand futures. It wants intensity, presence, and vivacity now. That makes every moment potent even without guarantees of where it will lead. When the mind releases the need for a final point, the soul at last breathes and begins to blossom in life's small encounters. Observe in real life how many people spend a lifetime chasing the ideal future, only to find the emptiness still there once they arrive. How many parents invest years into raising the perfect child, only to realize they lost the spontaneity of the journey? How many professionals climb the corporate ladder dreaming of the top, only to discover it offers no promised meaning? Frustration does not arise from lack of achievement, but from the myth that the destination would fill the void. Ironically, that obsession with a single destiny blocks precisely what could make us happy: openness to the unexpected. When we accept that life has no fixed map, something magical happens. We allow ourselves to be surprised, redirected, and moved by chance encounters, fleeting passions and opportunities that were never part of the original plan. That is when existence's true power begins to pulse, when we give room for the soul's improvisation. Hillman invites us to trade linear thinking for imagistic thinking. It is not about arriving, but about living images that unfold in a spiral. An artistic calling today, then an intense love tomorrow, then a time of inward reflection next. All of it weaving the unique mosaic of your journey. It is like a book full of independent chapters, linked by an internal poetics no one can predict. If you are already starting to feel relief from this possibility, know there is still one essential point in this journey. Understanding how the obsession with finding your life mission can be precisely the poison that paralyzes spontaneity and blocks the soul from flowing freely. There is something cruelly ironic in this frantic search for purpose. Instead of freeing us, it often imprisons us in paralyzing anxiety. We wake each day with our mind racing through questions. Am I doing what I should be doing? Am I wasting my talent? Did I choose the wrong career? That constant doubt creates an inner environment of fear and blockage. Rather than experimenting with new possibilities lightly, we feel stuck, as if every misstep were fatal for our dreamed purpose. And thus spontaneity slowly dies, swallowed by the pressure to get it right. Hillman saw this with uncomfortable lucidity. For him, that obsession is not a sign of depth, but of a panicked ego. When the ego believes there is only one right path, every decision becomes a minefield. And the more we try to think out our mission, the less we actually feel it. The soul does not operate under logical command. It manifests in flashes, desire, and unexpected passions. The problem is we were taught to distrust anything we cannot control. Notice how this plays out in real life. People who spend years researching 1,000 options before taking a simple step. Those who change college majors 5 times for fear of making a mistake. Professionals who remain in unhappy jobs yet cannot risk trying something new. Artists who never start their work out of fear of imperfection. Parents who project onto their children the mission they never found in themselves. The result is a cycle of paralysis, where the natural motion of the soul is suffocated by the expectation of perfection. Hillman reminds us, life does not require that rigidity. Spontaneity is the soul's hidden engine. It is when we try things not knowing where they will lead. It is curiosity guiding us to new encounters, new interests, new versions of ourselves. And it is precisely those unexpected experiences that often open unimaginable doors. The soul does not follow a script. It dances. In that dance, improvisation is not a mistake, but the very choreography of existence. But when someone buys too deeply into the idea of life mission, they turn every choice into an internal tribunal, and with each decision not made comes regret for what might have been. That relentless self-judgment generates silent emotional wear that gradually steals the joy of the present. What was meant to be a liberating quest becomes an emotional prison. If you recognize that wait, now is the time to open a space of relief, because there is a powerful way out of this journey. A call Hillman insists on bringing to light. It begins precisely when we stop searching for one great mission and start living the small meanings the present generously offers. Perhaps the greatest gift someone can receive in life is not the revelation of a grand mission, but the ability to perceive the small meanings born every moment. Hillman urges us to emerge from tomorrow's neurosis and rest our gaze in the here and now, because it is in everyday moments that the soul finds its true nourishment. A sincere conversation with a friend, a book that sparks new ideas, the pleasure of preparing a meal with care, the curious wonder of learning something new. Each of those small experiences contains its own legitimate meaning. There is no need to seek something grand all the time. This shift in perspective is almost an act of spiritual rebellion. Instead of waiting for a divine summons, you begin to see meaning in life's small interactions. Hillman says meaning is not a prize to be won, but a fragrance that arises as we walk. When you surrender to the present, you create space for the soul to flourish organically. No forcing, no control. Just presence and openness, and life will offer daily pearls of meaning. Notice how those who live lightly embody this. They never seek a grand plan, yet they are always learning, helping, creating, marveling at life's subtleties. They do not live paralyzed by fear of error. They experiment. And precisely for that, they live with a constant sense of fulfillment. Not because they have discovered a one true mission, but because they learn to savor the small calls that arise every day. That is the invitation few dare accept. Culture screams, we must have grand plans. The soul whispers that the now is already full of meaning. A simple example: instead of waiting for the dream job, dive into your current role with excellence, discovering new skills, new connections, and new possibilities. Or instead of waiting for the perfect love, open space for genuine relationships that bring growth even without eternal guarantees. In those small moves, the soul's greatest encounters happen. Hillman reminds us, meaning is built in the act of living. Like a gardener tending the soil daily, uncertain which flowers will bloom. There is beauty in that uncertainty. because it keeps the soul alive, curious, and in constant transformation. There is no fixed map, yet there is always a next possible step. And in that next step, true meaning reveals itself. But there remains one final essential ingredient in this profound vision. Because once you let go of the definitive mission and surrender to small meanings, something even more poetic begins to emerge. A new outlook on life, where presence, beauty, and aesthetics become the ground upon which the soul walks. For Hillman, there is something deeply healing and transformative in perceiving beauty in small things. He is not speaking of beauty as superficial, but as a state of presence where the soul is touched by the wonder of the moment. When you watch light filtering through tree leaves, when you breathe the aroma of fresh coffee, when you witness someone's genuine smile, those small moments are portals connecting the soul to existence's mystery. That is where life reveals its hidden poetry. Aesthetics in this sense is not about appearance, it is about sensitivity. It is about training eyes and heart to see the extraordinary in the ordinary. Hillman teaches that the soul thirsts for beauty, not as luxury but as essential nourishment. And the more we live aesthetically, the more the soul expands. Grand travels or epic achievements are not required. Simply be fully present and tender in whatever you do, from arranging the breakfast table to listening to a friend with sincere interest. Notice how some people seem born to turn everyday life into art. They prepare a simple dish with such care and love, it becomes almost ceremonial. Or they transform a walk in the park into a complete sensory experience, noticing colors, scents, and sounds. Hillman would call that living poetically. It is the soul recognizing life's intrinsic beauty, even in the simplest tasks. When we live that way, an interesting thing happens. Anxiety about the future loses its grip. After all, present pleasure fills the spaces once occupied by worry. That does not mean problems vanish, but perspective shifts. We begin to understand life does not need to be perfect to be beautiful, and in fact its greatest charm often lies in its imperfections, like a painting with small flaws that make it unique. The poetics of life grants access to a lighter dimension of existence. It is not about ignoring pain or denying hardship, but about allowing them to coexist with the present's beauty. It is an invitation to emotional maturity. When we accept meaning is not a large trophy to win, but the sum of daily delights we give the soul its much-needed space to breathe. And strangely, many of our dilemmas begin to dissolve in that state. Yet even after grasping this aesthetic of living, there remains one last paradox to unveil. Because at heart the greatest shift happens when we realize meaning is not found at arrival, but emerges as we walk. And here we reach Hillman's core insight. True meaning is not somewhere fixed waiting to be found, but is born as we journey. It is a paradox because the harder you try to grasp meaning, the more it slips away. But when you simply live, surrender, and experiment, meaning blooms organically. It is like walking down a foggy road. You cannot see the final destination, but with each step, the next curve appears. And the journey's beauty lies precisely in that unfolding. Many remain trapped in the illusion they can only be happy once they discover their purpose, as if life held a secret code that once deciphered would bring peace. But Hillman shows that obsession only delays contact with real life. Because the soul does not work with certainties, it works with movement. Meaning is not a finish line, but the consequence of living with authenticity, presence, and openness to the unknown. The path is the very stage where meaning builds itself. See how this plays out in practice. A musician who plays for pleasure, not obligation, discovers new creative avenues. An entrepreneur who experiments with projects without fear of being right ends up finding innovative paths. A relationship that begins without rigid expectations, but with sincere commitment, creates fertile ground for love to bloom. Whenever we release control, we give the universe room to surprise. And in those surprises, true meaning often emerges. Living that way demands courage. Courage not to know everything, to change direction when the soul calls, and to embrace the unknown without a guarantee at the end. But that courage brings a powerful lightness, because at last the pressure to be perfect melts away. You begin to see that each encounter, each choice, each stumble has value in itself, and that even unexpected detours may be the exact shortcuts your soul needed. Hillman teaches the path of meaning is not linear, but spiraling. With each turn we revisit old themes with new eyes. What once felt confusing gains new subtleties. Yesterday's losses become tomorrow's wisdom. The soul stitches together its own tapestry as we keep living. There is no point where everything fits definitively. There is only a constant refining of our own story, and precisely by understanding this paradox, a rare kind of freedom is born. A freedom that allows you to breathe without guilt, choose without paralysis, and live without the neurosis of finding one grand purpose. And now that you have reached this point, you may be starting to feel relief from that insight. So tell me, how many times have you found yourself trapped in this silent trap, waiting for the big purpose? How many opportunities have you let slip because you thought you were not yet ready or not yet that person? The truth, my friend, is that life is happening while you wait. And every small step, every simple experience, every daily choice already carries a meaning your soul is asking to live. So I ask you with love and the firmness you deserve, until when will you wait for the great calling? Until when will you postpone the joy of simply living, experimenting, erring, succeeding, and tasting existence's real flavor? The answer is not out there, but here now in this very moment as you breathe. Listen and allow yourself to awaken. If this resonated with you, I have an invitation. Start today applying this fresh viewpoint to your life. Try small new things just for the joy of trying. Let your soul play with possibilities. That is where true meaning begins to blossom. And of course, if you want to keep diving into this deep knowledge, few dare to subscribe to the channel now. Hit the bell, because here we do not offer easy answers, we offer real liberation. I will see you in the next video so we can continue this journey together.